All right, listeners, ready for another deep dive? Today we're going to tackle something super relevant, especially if you're gearing up for the UPSC and taking on international relations.
We're going to be looking at political science itself and how it's evolved over time.
Exactly. From behavioralism to post-behavioralism, and then this thing called neo-behavioralism.
It's a fascinating journey, and understanding these shifts can give you a real edge when it comes to analyzing those complex IR theories and events.
Think of it like mapping the course of a river. You know how it winds and changes direction over time.
We're going to trace those changes in political science, see where the currents have flowed and where they might be heading.
And trust me, this is going to be super helpful for anyone grappling with IR, especially for the UPSC exam.
Absolutely, because the way we study politics has a direct impact on how we understand global affairs. You can't separate the two.
So let's dive right in, starting with behavioralism. This was all about making political science more scientific.
Exactly. It was a big push for using empirical data and scientific methods to study political phenomena.
So instead of just relying on theories or philosophical arguments.
Behavioralists wanted hard evidence. They wanted to observe behavior, collect data, and analyze it rigorously.
Like if you were studying voting behavior, you wouldn't just speculate about why people vote the way they do.
You'd go out and conduct surveys, analyze voting patterns, maybe even observe people at the polling booth.
It was all about data, data, data.
Pretty much. The goal was to make political science more objective and evidence-based.
But then things started to shift. What sparked the move towards post-behavioralism?
Well, imagine the world in the 1960s. You've got the Vietnam War, the civil rights movement, all this social and political upheaval.
It was a turbulent time for sure.
And a lot of scholars started questioning whether a purely data-driven approach was enough to grasp the complexities of politics and the ethical dilemmas involved.
Like maybe numbers and statistics couldn't capture the whole picture.
Exactly. There was a sense that political science needed to be more engaged with real-world issues and address pressing social problems.
And that's where David Easton comes in, right? He was a key figure in this post-behavioral revolution.
Absolutely. In 1969, Easton published this really influential article where he called for a post-behavioral revolution in political science.
So what did he propose?
Well, he argued that political science couldn't just be an ivory tower pursuit. It had to be relevant to the real world and address the pressing issues of the day.
It's like saying, okay, we've got all this data and these fancy models, but what are we actually doing with them?
Exactly. Easton believed that political scientists had a social responsibility to use their knowledge to make a positive impact on society.
So post-behavioralism was about applying knowledge, not just acquiring it.
Right. And it was also about recognizing that facts and values are intertwined.
No, what does that mean exactly? Facts and values are intertwined.
Well, let's say you're studying climate change. From a purely behavioralist perspective, you might just focus on the data, the rising temperatures, the CO2 emissions.
But a post-behavioralist would dig deeper.
They'd also consider the ethical implications, the potential consequences for vulnerable populations, and maybe even advocate for policies to address the crisis.
So it's about acknowledging that our values shape how we interpret facts and the actions we take based on them.
Precisely. It's about bringing ethics and values into the equation.
Okay, so post-behavioralism was all about real-world engagement and social responsibility. But did they completely reject theories and models?
Not at all. They understood that theories are important for providing frameworks for understanding complex phenomena.
But they had a different perspective on how theory should be used.
Right. They insisted that theory should be testable, open to debate, and ultimately useful for addressing real-world issues.
So it wasn't about rejecting theory, it was about making it more relevant and applicable.
Exactly.
Now, this shift towards post-behavioralism also led to political science becoming more specialized, didn't it?
It did. New areas of study emerged like feminist political theory, environmental politics, critical race theory.
It's like the river of political science branching out into all these different streams.
And that had both positive and negative consequences. On the one hand, it enriched the field, bringing in diverse perspectives and tackling issues that had often been ignored.
But it also made the field more fragmented.
Right. Easton himself noted this. He observed a general loss of central focus in political science.
So was neo-behavioralism an attempt to bring back some unity to the discipline?
In a way, yes. Easton proposed neo-behavioralism as a sort of bridge between the rigor of behavioralism and the real-world engagement of post-behavioralism.
A kind of middle ground.
You could say that neo-behavioralism tries to incorporate elements of both approaches, recognizing the value of formal models and quantitative methods, but also acknowledging the importance of interpretation and historical context.
So a bit of a balancing act.
Definitely.
Now, for our listeners who are prepping for the UPSC, especially those tackling the IR optional paper, how does understanding all this actually help them in the exam?
Well, think about it. The UPSC isn't just testing your knowledge of facts and figures. It's about your ability to think critically, analyze complex issues, and construct well-rounded arguments.
And knowing the history of political science gives you a broader perspective.
Absolutely. Understanding how these different approaches have shaped our understanding of global politics is a game changer. It helps you analyze events and theories from multiple angles.
So when you're analyzing a conflict, for example, you're not just looking at the immediate triggers, you're also thinking about the historical context, the underlying power dynamics, the ideologies at play.
Exactly. And you're better equipped to evaluate different policy options and their potential consequences.
It's like having a whole toolkit of analytical lenses to choose from.
Right. Let's say you're asked to analyze the effectiveness of international sanctions.
A complex issue, for sure.
A purely behavioralist approach might just focus on measuring the economic impact of those sanctions.
But a post-behavioralist would consider the ethical implications, too.
Exactly. They might look at the unintended consequences for civilian populations or the long-term effects on political stability.
So having that multidimensional understanding is crucial for crafting a nuanced and insightful answer in the UPSC exam.
Absolutely.
So we've journeyed from the data-driven world of behavioralism to the socially conscious realm of post-behavioralism, and finally to this bridge-building attempt of neo-behavioralism.
It's been quite a ride.
But the journey's not over, is it? Political science is constantly evolving.
Exactly. It's always grappling with new challenges and seeking new ways to understand our complex world.
And as future diplomats, our listeners will be part of shaping that future.
Which makes me wonder, given the ever-increasing complexity of global politics, where do you think political science needs to go next? What new approaches or areas of focus do we need to explore?
That's a fantastic question to ponder. And if you enjoyed this deep dive into the world of political science, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more insightful episodes.
We'll see you next time.
See you next time.